Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
It is time once again for everybody to come aboard that Green Screens Media train. This is One and Done. Welcome in to everyone. We are your fast break of DFS and betting info that you need to see those green screens and get that bread. My name is Jay Heinrich. I am the conductor of the aforementioned train. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. William Cannon. But a better Twitter follow than me even, up here on the top row with me tonight. You can find him out there on them Twitter streets at Fantasy Nav, Mr. Eric Romoff. Eric, what it do?
What's up, my dude? Sunday, a few hours left in Sunday, officially a week left till Selection Sunday. I mean, March 12th is a holiday around these parts, and it is coming up sooner than we could imagine. Also, here and excited because we're still giving stuff away. New week, new giveaway, Razier Bolton jersey this time around. You want to get involved, you know what to do. Hit those buttons, like and subscribe most specifically. And also get over to our Twitter page. In the comments right now, there is a link to our pinned tweet. Hit that little retweet button, tag some of your hoop heads in your life, and you're in the mix for the drawing this Friday, again, for this Razier Bolton jersey.
What's not to like? We gave away the Matthew Mayer jersey earlier last week. With the can of Monster, I believe. Maybe it may or may not have been included in that. But here we go, Razier Bolton. What's not to like about this, guys? It's real simple. Get over there to @GetGreenScreens on Twitter. Make sure you smash @FantasyNav, @Dr. William Cannon. And, of course, do not forget to smash that follow button @MC Holland 34. Mr. Money, Mike Holland. What up, man?
Yo, what's up? My wallet's a little bit fatter after some bets today. Had that old 200 spot on our Drake Bulldogs, so we can see them in the tourney. So that's exciting. But I just saw in the comments here we got Mike Witzgall. Sorry for the pronunciation if that was wrong, but he took down fourth on the Saturday main slate. I just rechecked and saw him in there taking down 500 bones.
Hey, baby Mike,
with a shout out. Yeah, two money Mikes, man.
Mike.
Well, he made a little more money on the DFS side than I did, but that's awesome. He had like three of our core plays in there, so appreciate the shout out on that. And
Mike,
yeah, man, I'm still catching some fire here with the betting action, and yeah, I'm excited to this next week is going to be pretty awesome. So many buzzer beaters already, so many crazy things going on. So yeah, let's get into a little bit of news and notes and talk for the tournament.
Yeah, 5 tickets have been punched to the trademarked big dance. Hashtag not our ownership of the term analogy. But 5 tickets have already been punched, including one team that has not actually even won their conference tournament. They still can because they're still going to play this game.
So
but let's start out in the Northeast Conference here. Merrimack, the number 1 seed in the conference, and they're sitting there waiting in the final. But they're not eligible, guys, because of the NCAA D1 transition rule. Even though they're good enough to play in the conference and win, they're not eligible for to qualify for that seat in the tournament. So Fairleigh Dickenson, guys, get that spot. 7th bid in program history. Last time they made it was 2019. Is there anything to like here? It seems like one of those teams on that, in that first 4, 16 seed type of deal. Mike, what is there to like, or what is there to watch for with these Knights of Fairleigh Dickenson?
Yeah, I mean, they're in, probably in the scenario playing for a play-in for a 16 here. Ken Palm rated 315th in the country. So they do have a solid backcourt, Dimitri Roberts and Grant Singleton. But, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an awkward game, too, because it's like, are they celebrating if they lose? Like,
Right.
It's kind of awkward,
Yeah,
Eric.
they
I don't
still
know,
are.
man. Yeah, is that?
Yeah, right. I mean, they got that in today, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, they celebrated it, but Eric, I wanted to ask you, how do you like approach this from a coaching perspective? You're already in, right? So are you going all out here to try to win this? Is it a thing where you look at it and it's like, okay, if it gets out of hand early, I'm just going to rest my guys? Like, how are you approaching this if you're the Fairleigh Dickenson coach?
Yeah, I think I'm sending it if I'm the coach of the Knights, right? Like the only thing that this team will have if they want to make any sort of noise in the big dance, which we spell incorrectly to avoid copyright infringement, is belief, right? Like they're gonna have to have wind in their sails. They're gonna have to be hyped up on their own brand, and in turn, coming in, actually winning the tournament instead of making it in on a technicality, I think, lends a little bit more credence to, we can play with anybody. If you're coming in and just getting absolutely dump trucked by a team that's not going to be in the tournament, morale is going to be a little bit lower. It's going to be a long shot wherever they land. They're going to be a 16 seed, but if they come in believing in themselves, then maybe, just maybe, they can keep that first game close.
Yeah, 4-22 last season, Mike. New coach, backcourt straight out of D2. Like,
yeah, you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy about this? Their KenPom defensive metric is 361st in the country. So whoever they play against in that first round, go ahead and stack them from a DFS side.
Yeah, right.
It feels like they're going to score a lot of fantasy points because they do play at a pretty solid pace there at 108th in tempo. So. Yeah, but we'll just move on. We'll see how it goes. It'll be fun to watch that Tuesday matchup that they'll play in, most likely.
No doubt about it. Let's move on now to the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament. Before we do, if you're hanging out with us live, leave us a comment. Let us know if there's anybody that has won a conference tournament or punched their ticket that you're excited to see. If you're here and you're liking what you're hearing, we got our DFS show coming up here soon. We'll get to hit a couple of those this week. And, our news and notes that we always like to get to for you guys, little bets here and there. So make sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on those notification bells, hit that like button, do all that stuff. We appreciate you being here. Like I said, Ohio Valley Conference Tournament here. Southeast Missouri State Redhawks win that 89-82 overtime after that crazy absolute nuts. We're sitting there, we were watching it and texting in the group thread as this was happening, and thought that they had won it in regulation, but it ended up being just the two. Obviously, this is another team that we haven't heard much of in the tournament in Southeast Missouri State, second bid in program history, last made it in 2019. But definitely earned this one after making their way through that Ohio Valley Conference Tournament, guys. So, again, this is somebody that's going to be pretty far down in the seeding. Anybody here to watch? I mean, KenPom metrics, it's okay. That's not great. That's not great. And that's, seventh in tempo.
Yeah.
Down a little bit. So, is that something to watch here moving forward for this tournament? Eric, I'll start with you.
Yeah, for pretty much the exact reason that Mike laid out when we were talking about the other game, right? Like, we're looking at the Missouri State Redhawks coming in as a 16 seed, very likely. Whoever they're going to be playing is going to be getting a below average defense and a lightning fast pace. So whoever they match up with in that first round is definitely of priority in terms of stacking in DFS. In terms of the Redhawks themselves, I mean, they've got a solid backcourt, which is something that is of value in the context of the tournament. Specifically, you look at a guy like Chris Harris. Not only is he getting you 15.5 points, but he also rebounds pretty well for a guard, almost 5 rebounds per game. So the versatility in that backcourt, it makes them an interesting out. But ultimately, this game is going to be fast paced, and whoever they're facing is probably going to be scoring buckets of points, right?
Mike, Philip Russell really drives this offense for the Redhawks. Is he a player that can sort of take over in a situation and maybe push the Redhawks to an upset? Is he that quality of player?
Yeah, he's pretty solid. This is a pretty good 1-2 punch in the backcourt. So, man, the thing for me is like I look at it on the defensive side, right? 242nd in defensive efficiency, but only 266 in offensive efficiency. So while they have two scorers, those guys are really going to have to do some work in order for them to, have any sort of shot. I think their profile similarly to Fairleigh Dickenson, right? Where, it's just going to be a tough matchup, especially if they get one of these monster bigs, in that first round matchup. If they get someone that plays a little bit smaller, maybe you could make a little bit of noise. But both of these teams, made nice seasons. We'll see it with what happens when the brackets come out. But I'm a little more excited to talk about these other three that kind of punched their ticket here. So let's slide on over to the Big South, Jay. Tell us what we got there.
Yeah, Big South action, Mike. I know this is one near and dear to your heart, and a squad in UNC Asheville that you were really wanting to see it make it to the tournament here, and that they almost, Campbell. We were texting again about this stuff today. You're like, Campbell's going to ruin us from being able to see Drew Pember in this tournament, and it really starts with him in UNC Asheville, transferring in from Tennessee a couple seasons ago, and has left his mark on this tournament. But UNC Asheville coming back here, Bulldogs, big time, late comeback, the type of victory that you like to see this time of year. Mike, tell us about Drew Pember. Tell us about these Bulldogs and why you were really hoping that they would find a way to win this Big South tournament.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of the mid-major teams that get in here that have star power, right? Because that's what makes it a lot of fun. We talk all the time about Max Asmus. Feels like he's his name is a member of the show. But Drew Pember, man, like we're gonna be talking a lot about him coming up here. I mean, basically a 20-10 guy. Absolutely a load of fun to watch. Has the number one free throw rate in the country. So he's going to be a nightmare matchup. And Jones, the guard, averages 15 points. He's a guy that can get to 20, 25. This is going to be a 1-2 punch that not a lot of people are going to be excited if they're a 13 or a 14. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. They're pretty balanced, Eric. Like what say you on this one? You think they could pull up an upset depending on the matchup?
Yeah, I mean, if they get the right draw, sure, and anything's in there, and maybe you look at a team like I'm not even going to speculate. Anyone can have a down day, right? Like it feels like this year more than any, it's absolutely a wide open field, right? So you mentioned Pember coming in, transferred from Tennessee 2 years ago. So UNC Asheville does have that star power that they can lean on. And look, if a couple guys have their ceiling games, they definitely have the potential to swipe one in the first round.
Feel like they might be seeing it a little bit lower even. This is one of those teams where, again, when you look at if they end up on like the 15 line and then one of these two seeds that is coming in and not playing their best at this moment, it's one of those things to keep into consideration when filling out those brackets. What Asheville does do well is shoot the three, obviously 9th in 3-point percentage. And if Pember's on his game, Tyron Jones is on his game, it could be an interesting matchup there for them. Let's move on now to the old Missouri Valley Conference. We've been paying a lot of attention to this one. I have, for sure. And those Drake Bulldogs, just like I was feeling, and Mike was feeling pretty good about it too, obviously. He was talking a little bit ago, making a little bit of cool, hard cash on those Drake Bulldogs. This was a game, guys, that was never competitive from the jump. And it was on it was on CBS too. So a large audience got to watch a Drake team that is really, really well coached. They do little things right in a basketball game that translate into tournament play, that translate to March, getting in passing lanes. It's like shot fakes, pivoting, good with their feet, good footwork, and all of those little things that overcome a lack of talent on a roster that can help you win a game and jump up and surprise somebody in March. and Drake, for me, could be one of those teams here. Mike, I mean, Tucker DeVries is somebody when Eric and I interviewed Coach DeVries right before the season started, that there were expectations, but not necessarily conference player of the year expectations, like he was awarded. I think Drake's somebody we're going to have to pay attention to when we're filling out our bracket. What say you about them Bulldogs?
Yeah, I mean, they have all the recipe to make a lot of noise. They're super experienced. And a couple of guys are 25. They got a 24-year-old, a 23-year-old, and then Tucker DeVries, who's 20, and their best player. And dominant, love his game. He's got like an old school type of game to it. A really good shooter. Takes some questionable shots every now and then, but really like what Roman Penn brings to them. I mean, we thought that from the beginning of the year, this is one of the teams that we targeted as a mid-major that could really challenge. And as a 12 seed, like, oh man, these fives. It depends on who they get as a 5 though, because there's a lot of Big 12 teams that are projecting as a 5. I don't like if they match up against TCU or Iowa State.
What about Miami, Mike? What if Miami's in that 5? Like, what do you think about a Drake Miami matchup?
Yeah, that would be straight fire, man. Like, can you imagine Garrett Sturtz and Isaiah Wong just like duking it out? Would be pretty awesome. Darnell Brody, no matter who they get, he's going to have to play like, oh my God, he's going to have to play like he did today. It was. That's one of the better games I've seen him play. So they're going to get that kind of production from the big man. The guards are going to kind of do their thing, and they're super experienced. So, Eric, you like them to pull an upset regardless of who they draw, or do you think it's more matchup specific?
I think they're the type of team that can be competitive, sort of regardless of who they draw, right? I think we're looking at a team that's going to be on the 11 or 12 line. So, they're going to have a chance to pull an upset, very early in this tournament. Their metrics on the macro level, support that case. 66 in offense efficiency, 66 overall in the net, 94th in offense efficiency, 45th in defense efficiency, only 28th in turnover, right? So like we talk about the type of teams that can pull an upset. They're teams that generally play solid brand of defense, that play pretty slow, that don't turn the ball over, right? So, that coupled with an absolutely veteran team, right? I think we talked about it a few shows back, but I wouldn't be surprised if this team is also older than the Oklahoma City Thunder of the NBA, right? Like they've got guys that have played a lot of basketball over the years. So, that's the type of stuff that, it's hard to quantify, but it has a material impact in these single elimination games for sure.
When you got a bunch of guys that have been playing ball for that long and are coachable, it's like that's a college coach's dream right there. You got a bunch of guys that are just willing to do anything it takes and do whatever you ask them to do, and that's what Drake looks like to me. They're going to be popular. Doesn't matter who their opponent is in the first round. They're going to be an extremely popular pick, whether it's on the 6-11 line or the 5-12 line. They're going to be a popular upset pick on a lot of brackets for sure. Last one here to punch their ticket so far, Kennesaw State winning that ASUN tournament, beating Liberty 67-66 on those last second free throws. First time in the tournament in the program's history for Kennesaw State. And this is another one of those stories, coming up from being really down in the dumps 3 years after a 1-win season. And Kennesaw State is now going dancing. Eric, we paid a little bit of attention to the ASUN in a couple of shows ago. We were talking about this being a conference where not a lot of depth, except at the top, a little top heavy, and Kennesaw State found a way to win this tournament. Anything stand out to you? Anything we need to watch for this team coming out of the ASUN?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, I need to take my medicine, right? I was backing Liberty Bibberty as most bettors out there were as well. Close game, 1-point game came down to free throws. and that really encapsulates, what this Kennesaw State team is. They're really good from range, 34th in 3-point percentage across the country, but also 54th in free throw rate, right? So they get to the line a lot. So, perfectly fitting that is ultimately how this game was won. They've got a couple of pieces that I think can make them interesting, specifically in their backcourt. They got Chris Youngblood. He's getting them almost 15 and 5 rebounds, I should say. Terrell Burden getting them 13 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists per game, right? So they've got some versatility there in the backcourt that I think should allow them to switch and do a pretty good job of trying to roll out a game plan based on the matchup they get specifically. But ultimately, I think if we see them compete in any of these games, it's going to be a pretty similar formula, right? It's going to be a real close game that's going to boil down to a free throw or two.
Mike, it's looking like right now they'll probably end up on like the 15 line. This is like against, you're going to end up against a 2, like a Baylor possibly or something like that. It all has to go right for Kennesaw State to win a matchup like that, right? Like it's got to just be everything's got to go their way, especially with a team like a Baylor.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher than most on these guys. I did want to see Darius McGee in the tournament. I think he was like 0 for 10 at one point from 3, which was that was the difference in the game. He could not make an outside shot, which is not indicative of his entire career. So we're going to miss out on a prolific scorer. But what we're getting is a devastating backcourt. Like Chris Youngblood's been playing very well. You highlighted Terrell Burden. But they have Brandon Stroud, who is the ASUN Defensive Player of the Year. These 3 guards, if you're going to get a team like Baylor, and I'm not saying they're going to pull an upset, but that's not really Baylor's kind of struggled with a bunch of guards, right? So all year we've seen them have trouble with those type of teams. I think it's matchup based, right? If they get a Baylor, like it's a little interesting. Maybe not for a straight up upset, but for more of like covering the spread. Because Brandon Stroud's 6'6", he's a lockdown defender. I kind of like what they have in that backcourt. Just depends on, who they get. And they're very small. They're 337th in average height. Their tallest guy is 6'8". So you match up against, and one of these other 2s that, has some big men that can do work. And it could be a long day. So it's really matchup based for me. And that's what I'm going to be looking at whenever the draw comes out.
Even some bigger guards, having to bang around. That's not just about the biggest guys down low either. Some of these guards are, you're going up against are 6'6", 6'7" themselves. So it's a tough draw for a Kennesaw State team any way you chop it up. All right, that's 5. 5 tickets have been punched. 5 programs and going dancing. $5. 5 going dancing. All right. Leave us a comment. Let us know any predictions that you want to make coming up. Leave us something in the chat. Call your shot. Do it now. We'll mark the tape. We'll jot it down. And then when you're right, we'll be like, hey, way to go. Insert name here. You got it right. All right. Leave us a comment. And if you're here, make sure you smash those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Let's move on to a little bit of bracketology, shall we? Heading into today's action, let's talk about some 1 seeds, gentlemen. Heading into today, the projected 1 seeds. No surprise, really, for me here. Kansas, Alabama, Houston, and UCLA. Mike, I'd like to start with you here. Houston, shaky win, but still found a way to get it done. Alabama, I don't know what to think about them.
Yeah.
Kansas is coming off a loss, but it's still Kansas, and UCLA is star power up and down. So what's standing out with those 4 projected 1 seeds at this moment? Anything that we need to think about heading into these bigger conference tournaments?
Yeah, I think on a large scale here, I still like Kansas a lot. We got to figure out Jalen Wilson get going again. Seems like he's just kind of been meh recently. Alabama, these are tough road games, man. Like at the end of the year, Texas A&M crowd was insane. They have a really good defense, but for whatever reason, they didn't seem like they wanted to bang inside and maybe get Bediako or even like Noah Clowney some easy touches. It just seemed like everything was firing from three, and that's going to get you beat sometimes. So I still think all these teams are pretty safe to get to a Sweet 16. It's usually a shock when a number one doesn't at least make it to the Sweet 16. So, it really depends on draw for this. I love UCLA. I love Houston as well. They have pretty much everything from guard play, the star guard power to, serviceable, even more than serviceable bigs. Just up and down, like just because they play in the AAC, it was a road game. Like I had Memphis plus 4.5. Like this is a huge game for Memphis to kind of boost not their resume, but just kind of maybe jump up a line or two. They could sneak out that win. Weren't able to do it, got beat on the buzzer beater. So I feel pretty confident getting all these teams into at least the Sweet 16, Eric. Is there a team that you're a little worried about, or you feel pretty similar?
No, for me, this is definitely the class of the league, right? I think there's a pretty good cliff between these four, and then the next grouping of like 6 or 7 that are kind of all clustered together. So this is the right group. I would personally have Houston above Alabama as the number 2 overall seed. Alabama, like there are so many things going on outside of this program. Their team is so incredibly young. Like it's hard for freshman-led teams to really make a super deep run in the tournament as it is. And you couple that with all of the off-the-court stuff, and, maybe they get a little bit wobbly down the stretch run, right? So Alabama's probably the one that I have the most concern with. But also we have to keep an eye on Clark for UCLA, right? He injured himself in that last game, came back to the sideline in a boot and with crutches. So, he's maybe not, the brightest name on their marquee, but he contributes in significant ways for this team. So if that's an injury that is, going to be prolonged, maybe that takes some of the wind out of their sails as well. But, ultimately these four are clearly the top 4 in the country for me.
That's just Jaime Jaquez junior season for me, baby. It's fired up. Before we move on, anybody, if you had to pick one of these to fall off of the one line, who would it be?
Oof. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's pretty. Unless Purdue wins the Big Ten tournament, which is a complete disaster, and we're about to talk about that. I don't really see any of these teams. Even if Houston loses in the first round, even if Alabama lost in the first round of theirs, and even if Kansas lost, like in the Big 12, UCLA, I think they're just going to kind of roll through their first matchup there. So I think this is pretty safe. I think the committee's going to have to make a choice here. Purdue does win the Big Ten title, if whether or not they're going to put the number 2 rated conference metric, by the metrics as a number 1. So we'll see. That's going to be a very tough decision, though.
If Arizona runs the table and wins the Pac-12,
I don't think they can quite get there. I don't think Texas can get there either. I think Purdue's probably the one that we have to look out for. But even then, they can probably get bounced in the first matchup that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, you feeling any different? Or are you just confident in those 4?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in them, right? Like to your point on Arizona, if they run the table, they're very likely facing UCLA in that final, right? So a deep run there should be enough to sustain their spot. I mean, maybe Houston. I think the only real mark against them that there's been some rumblings around is kind of overall strength of schedule based on them playing in the AAC. So if they mess around to get bounced in the first round and a Purdue wins a Big Ten, maybe, right? But I think these four are relatively safe, barring something just really wild playing out.
Oh, so a little bit of the one line talk there. Let's go to the opposite end of who will be getting into this tournament here. Last 4 buys: Pittsburgh, NC State, Auburn, and Rutgers. Right now, Rutgers for me probably has to do a little bit more to get in. The last 4 in Mississippi State, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Penn State. So those last 8 there, gentlemen. There's going to be some movement, I feel like, after some, this new the new update probably drops tomorrow from Lenardi on some of the bracketology stuff. So like looking at these last 4 buys, last 4 in again: Pittsburgh, NC State, Auburn, Rutgers, Mississippi State, Nevada, Wisconsin, Penn State. Eric, I'll start with you. Who do you feel like has helped themselves the most recently, and even with some performances today?
Yeah, I mean it's got to be Penn State, right? Like this is the team that, I mean, look, they like we like to joke about the Big Ten just getting all of their teams in the conference in, but you look at the stretch run for Penn State. They've got the big win today against Maryland, 65-64. They went on the road and beat a really strong Northwestern team in the game prior to that, right? So it feels like they're building momentum, and specifically, going back a few weeks to the top 16 seed revelation show, it seemed like the committee was really putting a priority on big road wins, right? Mm-hmm. All of those top 16 teams had kind of a signature road win. I think that's what Penn State collected, heading to Northwestern and picking up that win back on Wednesday. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if when we see this refresh sometime in the morning tomorrow that they are, comfortably into one of those last 4 buys.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest loser is the Rutgers here recently. Yeah. I mean, what are we doing? Like, they just have not been playing well. I think they're going to drop from the last 4 buys to, look, like right now the projection was that we have 10 in. There's going to be movement here. Penn State's jumping up. Somebody's going to fall down. I think that's at the expense of Rutgers. So if Rutgers had won tonight, I think the Big Ten could legitimately claim maybe 9 or 10 to get in. That's just another very tough loss for them at home. So, yeah, this is going to sort itself out in the Big Ten tournament, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But Jay, do you have any movement here? Maybe a Mississippi State and Nevada. Do you have any similar lines to us on movement?
Well, Mississippi State and Nevada aren't doing themselves any favors right now, late in the season. Rutgers, I agree, is probably going to be on the outside looking in completely. And a team like a Clemson or a Utah State, somebody that's sort of peeking on the outside looking in now with the way that Rutgers has sort of fallen off, it could be an interesting thing to look. But Penn State, we've been talking about this for a while now. Penn State has just been hanging on by a thread and hanging around and just do just enough to stay in the conversation. And that's not a team that I want to look across the bracket and see their name if they make it. A team like that that's just finding a way to get things done at this time of the season. If they get in, I'm going to have them on upset alert here in the tournament for sure.
Especially when you got Jalen Pickett, you could roll out there. Like,
it's not a bad gimmick to have at your disposal there. So, yeah, I mean, Penn State is the one that stands out to me out of those 8 there. So those were the 8 that were in before, obviously that we'll get that update coming here. Let's look at a few teams here that are listed first 4 out, last 4 out. First 4 out were Utah State, Clemson, Oklahoma State. That's tough. Arizona State also, who lost at USC, and then the next 4 out: Michigan, who needed to win against Indiana today, and to not get it done. North Carolina, Duke took care of that yesterday as well. Vanderbilt did win at Mississippi or at home against Mississippi State, and Oregon got a victory as well. So, out of those 8, Mike, I will start with you. Anybody making enough noise to really make that next leap? Are there any teams that we can look at and comfortably say, hey, if they win a game in this conference tournament, they might be able to get in? Or is it going to be, some of these are going to have to nearly run the table?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State has the easiest path, right? You win one game in the Big 12 tournament. I think they're good. So we'll see. I'm surprised. I think what's going to happen here is that even if you slide into this last four in, that there are some bubbles here with some of these conferences that are just outside the Power Six. Where if somebody wins that conference tournament, one of these teams are going to, 2 or 3 of these teams get squeezed out. I think Oklahoma State deserves to be in. I think the Big 12 deserves to have 8 in. Utah State, like devastating offensively, number 2 in the country in 3-point shooting. Like, nice win against Boise State. North Carolina, we'll see what they do, and we'll talk about their bracket here in a second. But Eric, I got to hear a follow-up on your guys here. You're just willing Vanderbilt into this tournament. I cannot believe they beat Mississippi State, man. What's going on here?
Where there's a will, there's a way, right? Stack's got these boys drinking their own Kool-Aid. I mean, realistically, a lot still has to go right in order for Vanderbilt to make their way in. But we talk about some of these teams that have the last 4 byes that are currently in the last 4 in, kind of stumbling down the way, and that creates an opportunity, right? So I think if we see Vanderbilt make a decent run in the tournament, but also the thing that's really key for them is if we don't have a ton of upsets in some of the other kind of middling conference tournaments, teams that
the bid stealers
wouldn't have gotten their way in and steal a bid. If those tournaments all hold serve, maybe just maybe we see Stack get it done and get these boys dancing.
It's going to take a lot, man, but you may will it there. You may speak it into existence. You may make it happen, manifest it, whatever you want to call it. I'm here for it, though. I wouldn't mind seeing it happen. There's always those 1 or 2 teams, right, where we're not even considering it, and then all of a sudden they end up in the bracket, and we're like, oh, they didn't belong here. And then what do you know? They're in the 11 line, and they're winning their first round. Who knows? What I do know is that we've got a giveaway going on right now on our Twitter page at Get Green Screens. If you aren't already following us on Twitter, make sure you get over there at Get Green Screens, like I said. Take a look at our pinned tweet. You see that nice, beautiful jersey right there at the top? It's Rasheer Bolton. That's his autograph. And if you look up here on the top row, there it is again. We're giving that away. All you got to do, make sure you smash that subscribe button on YouTube right here on the Green Screens Media channel. Retweet the pinned tweet at Get Green Screens on Twitter and tag 2 friends. Simple as that. Tune in on Friday, March 10th on our DFS show. We're going to give it away. We're already going to be giving you the information you need to get this bread, like our guy Mike did the other day, right there, 4th on the main slate, Saturday.
That's some real money.
Yeah, that's some real cash there. We're already giving you the tools to get this bread, and we're giving you an opportunity to win this jersey. So head on over to the Twitter page, make that happen. Easy peasy. You got it. I believe in you. We all do.
I know I do.
Yes. Yeah. Let's break down a little bit of this conference tournament action now. We've hit on some of these lower mid-major type conferences. Now let's move on to the big boys. Mike's favorite thing to talk about is how the Big Ten getting double-digit teams in, perhaps. And Mike, you talked about it earlier, though it's probably not actually going to pan out to 10, but some very interesting. At the top of this conference, Mike, I'm not feeling the most confident in Purdue. I do like the way that Indiana's playing right now. You never count Tom Izzo out in March. And their odds are super.
Oh my God!
their odds to win this conference tournament are so juicy. Where are you standing on the Big Ten right now? Obviously, we have the bracket here pulled up on the screen for your viewing pleasure. So, Mike, what are you liking about this Big Ten Conference Tournament?
Well, I also like the plus 1,700 on Michigan. I'm trying
go.
to figure out why it's like that, but I see who they have across from them on that bracket and who's potentially going to be there to play them. They're probably going to have to run through Iowa, go through Purdue, and then they still have Indiana or Northwestern or Penn State on the other side. But Lenardi has 10 in. I really think this is come down to 8 teams. So we think there's a play-in game basically right now with Rutgers and Michigan. Whoever loses that game is done. And then the winner gets to play Purdue, and they get to try to secure their way in. So that at the top of the board is something that I'm looking at. Wisconsin plays Ohio State. They're probably going to have to beat Ohio State and Iowa. And they could potentially get in depending on, what else happens here. Rutgers and Michigan both, Rutgers or Michigan lose that first game, and then whoever wins loses to Purdue. That may create a path where Wisconsin beats Iowa and Ohio State and gets in. So the top half is the most interesting. I think Penn State's pretty safe right now. It feels like, but those things kind of need to happen if they lose their matchup against Illinois. Maryland's probably in the safest spot right now. They're nowhere near the bubble, and they'll get a matchup between Minnesota and Nebraska. I don't like the way they match up with Indiana, though. They're a smaller front court, so that one could be a little bit scary. But let's look at some odds, guys. We talked about the plus 1,700. I don't mind taking a shot at someone like Illinois, who's kind of a wounded dog right now at plus 1,000. They're kind of in an interesting draw, right? They get Penn State. They're play two different styles. So if their style wins, they get Northwestern. So I don't mind them to, at a 10 to 1. Eric, where are you at on this Big Ten? What kind of odds you looking at here?
Yeah, there's some interesting prices on the board here. I'll say it again. Michigan State at plus 1,700 is just wild. Of all the 4 teams to have the double bye, for them to have the longest odds is a bit of a head scratcher. Definitely jumps out. I'll go to a team that is presumed to be their opponent here in their very first game in the second round of the tournament. That's Iowa at plus 1,000, right? We look at Iowa overall. It feels like they're really starting to get things rolling here down the stretch. They've obviously got the star power with Murray there. We've got other pieces like our guy Perkins heating up. We've got Rebracha still there, and they've beat Michigan State, granted in a double overtime game not that long ago, right? So it feels like their side of the bracket lines up really nicely, right? Once they, or if they are to beat Michigan State, they have a Purdue team that they've played well against as well. So it feels like at plus 1,000. You're getting a pretty good price for a team that, at least in their path, they've got teams that they've either beat or played well against.
We can't just ignore Indiana here. It's not. I know it's not as juicy, but we can't just ignore Indiana at plus 400. The star power in the middle, kicking it out to those shooters if he needs to. I gotta take a look at Indiana. I'm not hanging around Purdue though. I promise you.
Nobody is.
Nobody is.
Not for plus 225.
Especially not at that price. Especially not at that price for sure. Let's move on to the SEC. 8 teams currently projected to be in the top of this conference. Man, you got Alabama, turmoil. Tennessee wants to win by scoring 46 points. Kentucky 3 weeks ago was out of the tournament. Texas A&M, identity crisis. Missouri, this is one of those things where any one of these teams can win at any time, but none of them just make me feel great about picking. Eric, I'll start with you here in this SEC. What are you looking for here? Is it Kentucky? Are you going with Alabama's antics right now? Is he still getting patted down? Are we doing finger gun celebrations? What are we doing in the SEC tournament, man?
Yeah, this one's a real head scratcher, right? Like, no team, in my opinion, should be a plus 150 price to win their conference tournament, right? Like that's, I mean, maybe if you want to talk about like Houston running through the AAC or something like that, fine. But Alabama has no business being plus 150. Same thing with Tennessee at plus 300. Like their style of game doesn't really lend itself to feeling very confident in a tournament run. And Kentucky is probably the logical answer, but because they're Kentucky, they're getting that tax on their number, right? I think they should probably be closer to like that plus 550, plus 600 range where I would feel really good about them. So all that is to say, I think this SEC tournament is absolutely wide open, and I'm probably going to fire at some long shots, specifically Arkansas at plus 1,200 really catches my eye. I like the way that the bracket lines up for them. Obviously, they've got some star power as well, and it feels like this team is really stretching down, or really gelling down the stretch run. So
yeah, and they also got Nick Smith.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like you've got the star power you're looking for with him for sure.
Yeah, I'm in a similar path. I saw Arkansas, and I see their, I think Auburn's a tougher matchup for Arkansas than Texas A&M is. So, we saw what happened with Kentucky and Arkansas, right? Like a really good game, but they have the bodies to throw at Sheboygan. I do like the Kentucky price and where they're at. Obviously, if they get an A&M, I feel comfortable about that, right? And I mean, you only have to win 3 games in this one. I'm kind of scared though Vanderbilt wins and plays Kentucky again, because this Vanderbilt team, like, it's crazy. They're the 6th seed. Like, that's absolutely wild to me. I think Alabama has an easier path with Florida down Colin Castleton, and Mississippi State kind of stumbling down here. I don't know how I feel about Alabama and Missouri matching up together. They both like to play at a lightning fast pace. It feels like Alabama just has better athletes, so that puts me into the championship game with Alabama. But it doesn't feel comfortable because of all the other stuff that's going on with them. So for me, I mean, if I had to place a bet, I feel most comfortable about Kentucky, and I'm basically off Tennessee. If they have to go through Missouri and Alabama, I don't know why I would pay for that price. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Is anybody on Tennessee? If you're out there on YouTube and you're on Tennessee, raise your hand.
Especially with the guy Ziegler going down for season-ending injury. Like, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that number needs to be way longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Does the SEC get more than 7 in?
I think 7's probably the number, honestly. I know what would we have? We have 8 in right now, with Mississippi State as a last 4 in. I don't think Mississippi State gets in. I don't know if Vanderbilt does enough to quite get there. So
Eric, over under 7. You taking the over or no?
I'll go with the over. Either Mississippi State does enough in this tournament to solidify their spot, or a team like a Vanderbilt is able to bounce them and make a solid run of their own. So I think we see this one stick with 8.
All right, well, moving on to now a conference that we thought before would have 8 and possibly even 9 at one point, the Big 12, still ranked as the number 1 conference by Ken Palm. When you look at Kansas and Texas at the top of this in terms of the odds to win this tournament, Baylor right behind, then Kansas State, Iowa State, TCU is the 6th betting favorite to win this conference tournament, which is amazing to me. Really speaks to the depth of this freaking conference, man. But again, they're the 6th favorite, and it's plus 850. West Virginia plus 1,500 as the 7th pick here. First 4 out. Oklahoma State right now did beat Texas Tech yesterday, and Texas Tech, after making a nice little appearance in the conversation here, has fallen off, and they're dealing with a suspended head coach now. And they're going to have to run the table and win this tournament to make it to the big one. Mike, I'll start here with you. There's a lot of numbers here, nothing in like those plus 150s or anything like that like we've seen before, but there's everybody sort of just bunched together here. So how do we how do you even decide on a value, on value here in the Big 12 tournament? And like, I don't know, does it even matter for some of these teams knowing that they're already locked into a spot in the big games?
I don't know, if you're betting this conference tournament, you're out of control. So congratulations. You may want to seek help, like plus 300 or more to for the favorites in this thing, like
for the number one overall team in the country.
Yeah. Right? Let's just move on. No, I'm just kidding. That is an absolute smash point right there, man. Like, that's insane, right? I look at the draw, and I'm like, well, I just called Baylor, Iowa State to go to Baylor and upset them. They, beat the crap out of them, and now they draw them again. On a neutral floor, though, I kind of like Baylor. So that's just the way this Big 12 is, right? Like, it's absolutely nuts. I think Kansas State's price is kind of interesting. There's been a great story, right? But honestly, the Desperado teams at the bottom are actually the most interesting to me. I don't know, Eric. What's your take, man? Are you firing at Texas or Kansas, or are you maybe taking a long shot, like a long shot in this conference, like a TCU or West Virginia, Oklahoma State, or a Texas Tech?
Yeah, I mean, I know I said it jokingly, but to get the number one overall team in the country at plus 330 is a really nice price. So I'll probably speculate there, even though it's going to be a buzzsaw coming out of this tournament. More practically speaking, I'm looking at the bottom half of this bracket as where I would try to get some value, and specifically that 3-6 matchup, right? Like that opening matchup is going to be an absolute rock fight between Kansas State and TCU. I think it's part of the reason why you see them sitting at plus 650 and plus 850 respectively. But whichever team emerges out of that, I think has a real good shot of running the table and potentially taking this thing down. So, if you want to try to cover all your bases, you can, and just give up a little bit of EV on that first round loss, whichever side goes. But from there, I like the winner of that 3-6 matchup to really make a run. So those two prices are jumping out for me as well.
The Big 12 has just cannibalized itself for the last month or so, and if the old iron sharpens iron thing holds true, we should see some Big 12 teams making it into the second weekend of March Madness. Let's move on to the ACC. Not as deep of a conference, not even close, but there are some teams at the top of this that definitely have the potential to not just win the ACC tournament, but are interesting plays to win the whole dang thing. Virginia, Miami, and Duke sitting atop of the ACC here. I don't know, man. Like, Duke at plus 280, the favorite right now, the betting favorite to win this. Better than Virginia, better than Miami. I don't know, man. Like,
because they're healthy.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's what we've been looking at all season, right? Is this a team that could put it all together and get their best players on the floor? And Mike, I guess we'll start with you here. Yeah. What about Duke? Sort of, at least has to make you consider playing them here.
Yeah, I mean, they got some of the best athletes, right? Like, whenever you have 5-star after 5-star after 5-star, this is the time of year where they start balling out, and they're no longer kids in high school, right? They're now, collegiate athletes. They've gone through the grind, some more than others with injuries. For me, I'm from a pricing and betting perspective, I'm kind of staying away from the top of the bracket. I don't really want to mess with Pitt, Duke, Miami, Wake Forest even. I want to come down here to the action, right, where the biggest storyline is, which is North Carolina at plus 600. I went on radio today stating that they actually drew a solid bracket here. I mean, they're going to destroy Boston College or Louisville. And then they're going to get to play Virginia, who they beat already. And Virginia has an issue because they start two guys that are 6'8" and 6'7" in their front court. And because they just refuse to play Shedrick for whatever reason, because they want more outside shooting. And that's Baycott's going to be a problem for them. If they get through Virginia, they're probably going to get into the tournament, because waiting for them, is either Clemson, who I think that they will handle, or a very dangerous North Carolina State team, who is probably the one team North Carolina does not want to see on this side of the bracket. It's not Virginia. It's actually North Carolina State. So I think North Carolina has a path here. If they were at the top of this bracket, facing up against Duke or Miami, even a Wake Forest is a little bit scary for North Carolina. But I like where they're at right now, especially from a price point. And I do like the plus, plus 1,200 for NC State. Like, let those guys at the top cannibalize each other. You get that NC State North Carolina matchup, which I think is gonna happen, and that's gonna put you in the championship game with one of those two teams at pretty ridiculous odds. So I know North Carolina's still plus 600. That shows you why, though, right? Like NC State's plus 1,200. So yeah, give me some of the North Carolina action there. Eric, where are you at on this?
Man, North Carolina was NC State was the bet that jumped out for me at plus 1,200. I like their side of the bracket, like you mentioned, sort of the worst case scenario from a matchup standpoint. I do think is seeing the Tar Heels a few rounds in, and they're a team that can certainly keep pace, if not win that game. So I like their price specifically. I think the storyline with this ACC tournament is really twofold. Like Pittsburgh just peeing down their leg in that Notre Dame game, completely giving away the ACC, and now look at them. Like, they should have a pretty easy win in their first game, but then they're going to have to face Duke, and then the winner of Miami or Syracuse or Wake Forest. Like, they're going to have to go through a murderer's row because they couldn't take care of business at Notre Dame a couple games ago. And also Duke at plus 80 plus 280, is so frustrating. Like, this is a team that realistically should be looking at plus 350 odds or so. I'm frustrated because I want to bet on them for a Final Four appearance, but because their name is Duke, their price on that is way shorter than it should be. But ultimately, this team is absolutely heating up down the stretch run. I think they're 14-1 since they've had all of their starters healthy and available. So just absolutely the type of team that you want to get, but they have the wrong name on their jersey. It's going to be hard to find a good price on them.
Yeah, I think the price that they're at right now is well deserved, to be fair, with how well they've been playing. And it's not going to get any better. They're heating up at the exact right time. Let's move on to the Big East now. 5 teams probably predicted to get in here: Marquette, UConn, Xavier, Creighton, and Providence. We were talking earlier, Mike, about the possibility of some of these, like the Big Ten, maybe only getting 7 in if they're, a bid stealers, one of those bid stealers down below can sort of jump up and snag a tournament here. Is there a team in the Big East that you look at that could possibly jump up that we're not even considering out of those top 5 that could find a way to win this tournament?
Yeah, it's Villanova with the healthy Justin Moore, and they wouldn't be in this position if he hadn't been hurt, and if Cam Whitmore hadn't started the season off with a broken hand. And then you put them with Eric Dickenson, the guys that were in the Final Four game last year, Brandon Slater, Caleb Daniels. Like, this is a dangerous, dangerous team. I hate that Creighton is awaiting them. I wish it would have been Xavier or Providence or even Marquette. Creighton's the one team where it's like, like that would be the one to put it into any chance here. But they are a bid stealer, and they're going to run over Georgetown, and then they're essentially going to be playing for their their lives here against Creighton. So yeah, that's where I'm at. The rest of it, man, like, this conference was weird, right? Like, they added so many top transfers, Eric, and it just feels like the cream kind of rose to the top, right? Kind of seeing the same thing that we saw last year. So what's your take? Are there any odds out there that you like? As far as for me, if I'm putting money down, I like Creighton at plus 300.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going as well. The kind of like we were talking about with the Big 12, that 3-6 matchup, presumed 3-6 matchup, is going to be a dogfight. But after that, I mean, we just got news today that Xavier is going to be without Fremantle for the rest of the season, right? So they should be able to, very easily handle Seton Hall or DePaul, whoever they get in that first matchup. And whoever comes out of that Creighton-Villanova game has a pretty easy path to the final, right? And at that point, I mean, both of those teams match up really, really well with either a Marquette or with a UConn. So to get Creighton at plus 300, to get Villanova at plus 1,000 is definitely something that I wouldn't mind laying a few dollars down for.
I'm not going anywhere near Marquette, and I don't need to really go into why. Okay, just leave it at that. No, Creighton, I plus 300 is. I would like to get a little more value for them there, but I get why they're at that number, and I'm liking that Creighton.
Here's what you say about Marquette, right? Like, hey, you won, good job. We're still going to put a UConn ahead of you. We're going to match you with Creighton, and then Fremantle's gone for the year. We're still going to give $550 to Xavier. So that's
right.
That's
exactly.
All that needs to be said there.
Yeah, that's all that needs to be said. All right, Pac-12. If you watched ESPN last night, you heard Bill Walton say "Conference of Champions" about every 30 seconds, man. And then I remember going out to the Dead show, and we were just sitting there, and I said, "You know what? This is gonna be the Conference of Champions." You know, out there touting for Oregon to get in, stuff like that. I'm just like, come on, Bill. But regardless, UCLA and Arizona at the top of this conference, USC as well. Those three are safe. Mike, anybody else possibly could get in from the Pac-12, or we're just looking at these three bids here? What's it looking like?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, realistically, Oregon, Washington State, and Arizona State have a chance to be a bid stealer here. I like Washington State. One, they basically get a bye against Cal. And then they match up very well with Oregon. They have the bigs to match up with Oregon. And then they basically have a play-in game. I would think with UCLA, so if they're able to handle UCLA, right, like you would think they'd be able to have a shot against an Arizona or USC or something wild happens out the bottom. I think for me, though, more realistically, Arizona is probably Arizona with the Clark news. I don't mind their price and where they're at, obviously, because I do think that Oregon can be a little bit dangerous for UCLA with their guard play. And then they potentially are a Washington State just with kind of like their style of play. But I mean, UCLA is my favorite to win it all. I got to see what's up with this Clark news. Like, it's a little concerning. He's a big piece. They're not very deep on the wing, so a little concerned with UCLA. I don't know if I won't pay that price right now until I get more news. I do like Arizona to win the conference tournament as of right now before we get the news. And then, this could be a bid stealer, and it could be something random too. Like Arizona State still has a path to get there. Eric, what say you on this wacky and random conference?
Yeah, that's the path I'm gonna walk down. Me and Bill Walton, arm in arm, skipping down the Arizona State path. Look, I mean, this one should pretty clearly be UCLA's tournament. If not, Arizona is the clear, second choice there. Their odds are a little too short, right? While they should be heavy favorites, a lot of things have to go right to win these conference tournaments. So to get, near even money or barely 2-1 doesn't feel right. So I want to swing for the fences, get some of those longer odds. And for me, that's Arizona State, right? They should be able to handle up against Oregon State. It's not exactly a rollover, but they've played well against them this year. Then they're going to face USC on a neutral court. That's a USC team that they just played on the road to a 3-point result. Obviously came up a little bit short, but they can certainly keep that game competitive. And if everything holds serve, they'll have an Arizona team that they beat as well a few weeks back. So, it's a lot of things will have to break right. I think it's fair to say, but plus 1,500 for a team that has a path with some fairly favorable matchups, or at least teams that they've played well against, feels like the right price for me.
Let's get on to the Mountain West now. Number 6th ranked conference in KenPom ahead of the ACC. The Mountain West has been a really, really good conference all year long. Plenty of solid teams there. They're probably looking at getting 3 in right now. in the Mountain West. San Diego State is the betting favorite right now to win that conference tournament at plus 150. Boise State behind them at plus 340. And then Nevada, who currently sits on the last four in line at plus 600 to win this. First four out on that line. Utah State did beat Boise State yesterday. Again, this is the team. This is a conference, Mike, with some really solid basketball at the top of it, especially. And again, ended up sixth in Ken Palm ranking in conferences. At this time. No joke there. Who are we looking at in the Mountain West?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like you get Nevada plus 600, who is in the last four in, but then Utah State is plus 380 and first four out. So give me some Utah State. The problem with Utah State is they're going to have to go through New Mexico in that backcourt. If they do that and they get through Boise State, you got to love that price. San Diego State does feel like they got a little bit more of a cakewalk here, which is why it's plus 150. I think of all the heavy favorites, I think they're the safest money because they are so good defensively, and they have Matt Bradley and their older team. Darian Trammell is good offensively. It feels like, Nathan Mensah is a ridiculous shot blocker and defensive player. So, yeah, it feels like if I'm going to pay for anybody as a conference favorite, I feel more comfortable with San Diego State. Eric, what say you on this side of the
Yeah, I mean, here we are again, right? Stop me when you've heard this one before. We're looking at a 3-6 matchup that's going to be really hard to get out of, but whichever team advances from that matchup, I think, it ends up being a really nice dark horse candidate for this tournament. Plus 150, like you said, with San Diego State it does feel like it's pretty safe money. But you look at Utah State, they're at plus 380. You look at New Mexico at plus 1,200. Either of these teams, advances out of that first round. They can certainly handle up against Boise, as Utah State just did in their last game. New Mexico's played well against them as well. And look, you make it into the championship game in any of these tournaments, and anything can happen. So, those longer odds, specifically New Mexico at plus 1,200, are super appealing. Utah State, I do think that they've got a chance to play their way in here, right? Again, it'll boil down to that first game, but they make their way through there, and I think that they've got a good chance of punching their ticket either by winning or by making their way in at large.
West Coast Conference, moving on now. A couple of teams out there at the top. This is the 8th ranked team, or the 8th ranked conference, I should say, according to Ken Palm out there. Gonzaga and St. Mary's at the top of this conference here. Real quick, guys, outside of those two teams, should we be paying attention to anybody?
Yeah, bid stealer, San Francisco or BYU. If one of them wins, the WCC is getting three teams in, and somebody's getting knocked out. So if I had to pick, I will go with BYU. I think they have more talent. San Francisco is good from range, but that they live and die by that three ball, and they have Gonzaga. I feel more comfortable picking BYU to beat St. Mary's if I had to do it. But obviously, Gonzaga's minus 145 and St. Mary's plus 125. So it's probably going to come down to one of those two. Eric, who you got?
Yeah, I think this one ends up being chalk, right? I think we see Gonzaga face off against St. Mary's and ultimately take care of business. It's been nice that it's been a little bit more of a competitive WCC for them down the stretch run, but ultimately, I think we will see Gonzaga win out. But this is very much so, like you said, one of those bid stealer spots. If either of these teams pull the upset, one of these fringe teams in the Big 10 or the Big 12 is probably going to be left home because of it.
I feel like of these conferences, these lower conferences that we're talking about right now, I actually think the American Conference is one that might be the most likely to get one of those bid stealers. So let's hop over there real fast. Houston and Memphis obviously sitting at the top of the American. Houston, overwhelming favorite here, minus 300 to win this conference tournament. I feel like that is I'm not really putting a ton of money on anyone else in this conference tournament, but there are a handful of people that, like I said, could make that bid stealing effort. Mike, Wichita State plus 3,000. That's a huge number. Tulane plus 2,000. Then come down a little bit to Cincinnati plus 1,200. Out of those, and maybe even Temple, is there anybody that we should pay more attention to? Are we, like I said, I do feel like that this conference is the most likely of between this and the West Coast to have a bid stealer. What say you?
Yeah, I like Tulane. One, they're on the other side of the bracket, so they don't have to play Houston. So if they do get them, it would be in the championship game. They have a dynamite backcourt, Jalen Forbes and Jalen Cook. Kevin Cross is a really good big man. Like any other man, I feel like if they were in a different mid-major, AAC is like a high mid-major, right? It's like the WCC. It feels like if they were in the Big South or whatever, like they would be the number one seed and get into this tournament. So a little bit tough here for Tulane, but I do like their price. So give me some Tulane, man. If we're gonna do some bid stealing here, Eric, what are you doing with Houston minus 300? Just leaving it alone, and you got anybody else here worth mentioning?
Yeah, I'm absolutely walking away from minus 300 for Houston. They should and very likely will win, but that's just the wrong price. I also like that Tulane number for all the reasons that you mentioned. I'll also I'll shout out Memphis plus 450. We go back to the Pac-12. If Arizona was sitting there as plus 450, we would feel really good about that number. I think there's a pretty similar comp with Memphis as the clear 1A to Houston's 1 in this conference, and much like Tulane, they're on the bottom half of this bracket, right? So they'll have a tough out in that presumed 2-3 matchup there on Saturday, but they make their way through, and we saw today even, right, they were within a buzzer beater of beating Houston. And, they were in control of that game for the vast majority of it. So plus 450 on a team that, has proven themselves worthy of competing with or potentially even beating a minus 300 favorite in their own conference is a price that I like.
Yeah, I feel like Penny's sort of figured it out-ish, kind of, maybe over there for Memphis. I'm back and forth on that, but they will be in the tournament regardless. Lastly, before we wrap this up, let's just Conference USA, nothing really exciting going on there, but potential bid stealers, since we've been talking about them here in some of these conferences. Mike, is there anything to pay attention to here? Like, is somehow Conference USA going to get somebody extra in, or is this going to, sort of be some chalk here?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is where my most confidence in a bid steal is going to happen. I've been hearing a lot that FAU is in, whether or not they fall on their face. But they're not going to. I don't feel like they're going to lose to Western Kentucky or UTEP. So one more win, it feels very, very comfortable that they are in the tournament. And then it's going to be a dogfight down at the bottom with UAB and their talented squad with Jelly Walker, and then UNT with not the director Tyler Perry, but the shot maker Tyler Perry. And one of those two, if FAU fails to get to the finals or even gets to the finals, UNT and UAB are going to be a bid stealer. Eric, are you with me? Following a similar path here?
I am on the exact same path, except for one key distinction. We do not know if Tyler Perry, the director, is not a bucket, right? This guy could potentially hoop as well. So I won't have you out here dragging his name through the mud on things that we don't know. But your actual analysis on the conference is spot on, right? Like FAU has got a pretty clear path to at least making it to the finals. Whoever comes out of the bottom side of this bracket, they have a legitimate shot of winning their way in. I hope and pray that it is UAB and Jordan Jelly Walker making his way in with our guy Eric Gaines. Plus 240 is a nice enough price for that. But ultimately, this is the rare opportunity for Conference USA where FAU has a good shot at an at-large if they don't win outright. And there are a couple of really exciting teams that could steal that last bid.
Yeah, it's because they're 10th in Ken Palm Conference, so it's a strong conference. FAU getting in on their own. Yeah.
I just want to be able to say that must be jelly because Jam don't get buckets like that. So gotta hope the UAB finds a way there. All right. That wraps up some conference tournament preview talk. But before we get out of here, a couple of things. Make sure that you head over to @GetGreenScreens on Twitter. Check out our pinned tweet there, because not only have we given away one jersey already, but we're giving another one away because that's what we do here at Green Screens Media. We are giving away that next jersey, Rasir Bolton autographed jersey. All you got to do, make sure you subscribe on YouTube right here. Smash that subscribe button. Turn on those notification bells while you're at it. Retweet that pinned tweet and tag 2 friends. Tune in on Friday's show when we're breaking down DFS stuff. And we'll spin the wheel. And you might win. Yeah, you're already going to be tuning in anyway to get this bread. You're going to want to tune in to get this jersey. Before we wrap, gentlemen, anything we want to add before getting to the vaunted Core Four for tomorrow? Anything we want to wrap up the conference tournament talk with?
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Like we've already had four regular season champions eliminated. Our guys up at Eastern Washington, yeah. So if you took that Weaver State, we'll see. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But Eric, you got anything before we head out and do the Score Four?
I mean, kind of the same thing that you said, but from a different angle, right? It is buzzer beater season. It is hard to make your way through a single elimination tournament to win this conference title, and so I find myself leaning on the side of the underdog. Right? Give me some guys with some triple or quadruple digit odds next to their name, because anything can happen. So I'm going to be doing a good amount of speculating, trying to turn some of that into some real life bread.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Like that Dwayne Wade gift. I love it. If you stuck around this far, we will give you a little DFS play here, courtesy of that dude at MC Holland 34 on Twitter, the vaunted Core Four. Mike, who are you looking at tomorrow on an interesting slate? Not a ton of star power necessarily, but maybe some room to make some plays.
Yeah, it's a 4-gamer tomorrow. I believe it's 2K to first on DraftKings. I'm going to keep it easy here. Dwayne Cohill, he's 7,100. Just a high usage player here. BJ Freeman, he's been balling out. He's 6K. So, certainly some decent price tags here, and I'll give you an even better price tag. Ahmad Rand, he's 5,200. Absolutely smashed in the same spot last game. And the Tristan Inaruna, yes, formerly of Kansas, he is 8K and dominating the mid-major ranks. So, yeah, we'll go with Cohill, Freeman, Rand, and Inaruna. And we probably won't be here tomorrow for you guys because it looks like the big DFS slate will be Wednesday. So we'll be here on, I think, Tuesday night.
Make sure you are tuned in to the Twitter page and the YouTube page so you can see when those shows will pop up. You can follow us on Twitter at GetGreenScreens. You can follow our guy right there, Mr. Eric Romoff, on them Twitter streets at FantasyNav. Wait. Yep, I had it right. Yeah. And then you can follow this cat right here, Mr. Money himself, Mr. Mike Holland at MC Holland 34. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, at Dr. William Cannon. I'm going to follow you back. We're going to have a grand old time. Keep those notifications on so you know when we're going to hit you up with the next DFS show. We got news and notes midweek. We got another DFS show on Friday. Tune on in. We are one and done, your fast break for college basketball DFS news and notes, and your fastest way to get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.